Welcome to the Clause YouTube channel.
Together, we strive for a safer, secure, and more stable world.
Hello and welcome to Clause YouTube channel, Strategic Frontline, where we take current events shaping national security and delve deeper into it with experts to get better understanding of the subject. Well, today our topic of discussion will revolve around the current ongoing situation in Bangladesh. And to delve deeper into this subject, we have with us experts on the region, Ambassador Veena, former High Commissioner of India to Bangladesh. Her deep insights into India-Bangladesh relations have made her a prominent voice in South Asian affairs. We also have with us Dr. Smruti Pattanaik, Research Fellow MP-IDSA, who specializes in India's neighborhood. Additionally, we are joined in by Dr. Kartha, Director Research and Analysis Clause. She has spent 17 years at the NSCS, where she worked on terrorism and other security issues relating the neighborhood. So a very warm welcome to all our esteemed experts here. We are truly honored to have you with us on this podcast. So we'll start with Dr. Kartha first, who shall lay the groundwork for today's conversation. Over to you, ma'am.
So I think thanks to all of you all for joining us. I think the basis of the discussion should be obvious given the very loud noises which are coming from Bangladesh and the fact that the army chief, who has behaved with absolute propriety so far, has been forced to sort of come out and say that, stop interfering in military matters, that he's against the corridor, that he doesn't want, he wants the country to unite. He's warned earlier also of dangers. So in this context, and today's, I think the statement was that the army spokesperson has said that no, we're all on the same page, but nonetheless, please don't go ahead with any corridor, any decision which has national security implications without consulting the army. So we're right now wondering, what is the chief advisor Yunus going to do? What is his position within the country? And what are the influences from outside which are driving him? So if we can, maybe we should start with exactly what his Yunus and because he's held meetings with practically everybody, I think, in the last 2 days. What is the internal situation as of now? If I could go to Smruti Pattanaik, please.
See, the political parties and the government are having a difference over when the election is going to take place. And as you were mentioning about the army chief's, speech a few days back, he was also saying that, the election date should be announced soon. And the BNP is also saying that there has to be an election roadmap. Yunus government appears to be reluctant to provide a very clear roadmap because some of the constituent of this particular government, the students as well as the religious political parties, they are not keen on the election to happen now. They have insisted that the reform has to happen prior to any kind of election. If election happens prior to any reform, then it will lead to the kind of autocratic system that Bangladesh has seen in the past. So the army has made it clear the humanitarian corridor which the government has announced is something the army has expressed that this was not, because this is a government which is taking decision on very significant national security matter without consulting the political parties as well as the army. So therefore there is this difference between the government and the army and also the other political parties minus the Islamic political parties.
Yeah, but the question that arises is that the NCP, which is not even a registered political party, right? But their members are sitting within governments with two very important ministries. One is information and one is local government and rural development. In Bangladesh, that's an extremely important ministry. So I think they don't want elections just now. They are obviously not ready on the ground. But why is the Jamaat Islami against elections? As I understand, they have a huge ground base.
Yes, but I would make a technical difference. Formally, the two student leaders who are part of the government have not joined the NCP. They're just students. So it's not that all the students are part of the NCP. So we need to make that distinction between the NCP and the people who are forming the government currently, the student leaders. But the Jamaat Islami, I think, probably thinks that the reforms are very significant and they need to perhaps prepare, even if they have the ground level support and all. Like, for example, the
No,
situation
no.
evolving.
Just to interrupt you, when you're talking of reforms, are we then talking of a constitution which is changed to suit their idea of Sharia and all the rest of it? Is that what we're looking at?
No, they are having dialogue with the consensus commission, which is meeting all the political parties. In fact, there was a statement yesterday from the chairperson of the consensus commission, Professor Ali Riaz, saying that he is yet to reach on any kind of consensus on reforms with the political parties. Each of the political party have a very different view. So the Jamaat wants to prepare for the election, and it appears that they're not prepared. Like, for example, if the Awami League is banned and not participating in the election, there is a huge political space that is available. So, which probably the Jamaat Islami, the other Islamic political parties, and the student leaders will jostle among themselves to see that how much of that vote bank they're going to appeal and try to get that support. It's not very clear that the core Awami Leaguers will not support any of these political parties. I would say that.
As far as my understanding goes, the Awami League base is still very vibrant. Though, I mean, I would completely rule out Sheikh Hasina going back anytime in the future, but the Awami League base remains. And with this also is the fact that this whole banning of the Awami League is going to create more unrest, right? I mean, I could ask, can I bring in Ambassador Sikri on this? And also, Ambassador Sikri, if you could address this issue of this corridor. I mean, what on earth are they talking about here?
Look, first of all, let's be very clear on one thing. I think we are all talking about something which is unreal. This government, the Yunus regime, is not a government, it's an interim regime, is an illegal concept. It's unconstitutional. So what authority do they have to ban the Awami League? Why are we accepting things that this government, this regime is trying to do, trying to impose against the will of the people? How can you accept it as sacrosanct? No. I think every decision of theirs can very well be challenged because they have no authority. How do they have the authority to do reforms? No interim regime, no caretaker government has any authority to do reforms. The job of a caretaker regime, if you may call this a caretaker regime, I think is not a caretaker regime because they have violated the conditionalities of a caretaker regime. A caretaker regime is to be there, number one, only for 90 days. Number two, precisely for the purpose of supporting the election commission in organizing elections and not take any major policy decisions in that time. Now, this regime is insisting that they are authorized to do reforms. Who gave them the authority to do reforms? The constitution cannot be changed just like that. It can only be changed by an elected government. And if they are, willing to stand up for election, then they should. But the fact of the matter is that in the last 8 or 9 months, this regime has proved themselves to be increasingly unpopular. In the beginning, there was this, Sheikh Hasina and anti-feeling against her, and it seemed as though so many students came on the ground, to make sure that Sheikh Hasina left on 5th of August. But very soon, it became very clear that Muhammad Yunus is a puppet. The one behind him are the Jamaat-e-Islami and all the other Islamist parties. He has violated the second condition of the interim regime, which says that no representatives of political parties should be in the interim regime. And the Islami Andolan Bangladesh is there, the Hifazat Islam is there, which is an Islamic organization, may not be a political party, but it's there. And of course, we also have people who left the interim regime to join a political party. So their relationship is very suspect. So I think that please, we have to really get down to brass tacks here and say that number one, as the army has said on the 21st of May, Darbar they had, the elections must be held by December 2025. So this question of ifs and buts about that should not exist because it's the army that allowed Muhammad Yunus to be sworn in. It is said that he will head the interim regime and we will go ahead for elections. And even then, actually, the Chief of Army Staff, Zaman, had said, okay, I give 18 months. And he had mentioned December 2025 even then. So actually, the regime of Muhammad Yunus, illegitimate as it is, and he tries to get support of other Nobel laureates and so on, he has no authority to do what he's doing. number one. And number two, on the issue of the corridor that you mentioned, it is very clear, because this is the most important point that came out of the consensus decisions of the Darbar that General Bakar Zaman organized on 21st May. He said that this, and he used a very strong word, I don't want to use it here because it's unparliamentary. He said that this dash corridor cannot exist. It is against the wishes of the army. It is against the security and sovereignty of Bangladesh. And the third point he added was that the regime led by Mohammed Yunus has been doing this, working on the corridor without consulting the army. So this,
but Ambassador, the question is, as far as I understand, it is the US which is pushing this whole idea of the corridor. Plus, there's talk of this, this Chattogram port's new mooring container terminal, which is being handed over to DP World. So there is a lot of. Then there was that US aircraft which landed. There's been a series of US official visits. In fact, that gentleman, which was Lieutenant General, I'm sorry, who had also visited Pakistan. I have his name here, who was allowed to meet with US officials without the permission of the chief of army staff. So what is the US role here? I'm trying to figure out what are they doing in Bangladesh.
well, the US, it was the UN Secretary General who went there and announced that there should be a kind of humanitarian corridor. And immediately after that, we had the visit to Bangladesh by General Wawel, who is from the US Pacific Command. And he spoke to the army chief, and I think he didn't get much joy there because they want to use this humanitarian corridor to send arms to the Aurakan army. That is the purpose that everybody in Bangladesh accepts, is the reason why the US has come out so strongly in favor of the so-called humanitarian corridor. So that's when they didn't get much joy from the chief of army staff. They went to Mohammed Yunus. Now Mohammed Yunus is prepared to latch on to anybody to extend his existence. He went to China, he met Xi Jinping, and then he announced his project in Lalmunirhat that we'll modernize an air force base and we'll put 70 aircraft fighter jets there, of course, right next to the Siliguri corridor and so on. And now he's working with the Americans to support the Aurakan army against the Chinese. So, this is against the Chinese who are supporting the Naypyidaw military junta. So, this was a completely, circular and one within the other argument just to extend the stay of Mohammed Yunus. I think, in my view, the best answer is, as the army has said, they are the only source of stability and authority in Bangladesh today. There is the army and then there is the president. And the army has clearly said that we have always maintained elections must be held by December. Please go ahead. They should now be a caretaker government, because Yunus regime is not eligible to be a caretaker government.
Yeah.
They have violated all the conditions. A new caretaker government needs to be appointed, and elections need to be held by December. Whoever wins the election is fine. Now, I think the question of Awami League not participating in these elections does not arise. The elections have to be free, fair, and inclusive. The army chief has used these words himself, and he said that all parties should be. Otherwise, you are going to be wanting to do the same things that you were accusing the Sheikh Hasina regime of being, right?
Yeah, but there is one problem here, which if I can just take it to Smruti. See, the holding of elections in December, right? The NCP, can they possibly get a nationwide presence by then? They cannot. So how will they ever support this thing of having elections there? I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, they have a presence in the major cities, but out in the countryside, they have nothing. They may get 2 to 3 seats, that's all. Besides which, I said they're not even a registered party. In addition, there is interestingly, the Jamaat-e-Islami has also opposed the corridor. Though one would assume that they will support whatever Yunus does, but they have opposed the corridor. They've opposed the port also, that port which is being handed over to DP, and they are. I don't want to put words in your mouth. So how would you look at that?
See, I agree with you that the NCP doesn't have the kind of support, especially in the rural areas. But as I said, I agree with what Ambassador Sikri said about the legitimacy of this particular government. But having said that, since this particular government appears that they are, this is the interim regime which is supposed to hold the elections, taking that into consideration, I would see that perhaps the election is going to happen under this particular government. And therefore, the Awami League ban, whether it is legitimate or not legitimate, probably unless until it's challenged in the High Court, there is a judicial process. So I really do not know. So we can question the legitimacy, but the fact is that it has been banned. It probably may not be allowed. So that is where I said that, the NCP probably is trying, because what I gathered during my last visit to Bangladesh, that in some of the places in the rural areas, the Awami League supporters were attacked after the government fell. They were given refused by the Jamaat grassroots level leaders, because it seems that it was a quid pro quo when the Jamaat was at the receiving end of the Awami League. So that point of time, some of the Jamaat cadres were also given refuge by the local Awami League people. So there is some sort of thing. But having said that, I think the rural areas will be very difficult. So I really do not know whether the NCP will win. It is difficult, so they need time to prepare themselves. Registration will not be a problem under this regime. They can easily get a registration. So I would say that on the question of why the Jamaat is opposing, the Jamaat obviously, it always takes a very nationalist position. It has a very good relationship with the United States, but also at the same time, the Islamists are generally suspicious of the United States. So they look at this corridor as something which may undermine the sovereignty of Bangladesh. So this particular issue, they're very critical, because this decision appears to be taken only by Yunus and the National Security Advisor Khalilur Rahman. Again, Khalilur Rahman was also appointed without consulting the army chief. So therefore, I would say that it will be very significant that the Jamaat will oppose this particular corridor. But then again, one really do not know. That it appears to me that both the NCP wants to branch out to the rural area. So they think that if they have time, they can do that. For Jamaat, that is actually not a problem. For Jamaat, the problem is that they want the reform to happen before any election takes place.
Okay, I think
Ma'am,
Anjali, do you have any questions?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, regarding this Aurakan corridor, I mean, the interim government was initially supporting this idea, and then the Bangladesh army strongly opposed it, saying bloody corridor. So, given these serious concerns, could you help us to understand what are the true objectives of this Aurakan corridor? I mean, is it helping people in need, or I mean, is it challenging the political situation of Bangladesh and the region?
Look, I think very clearly that the idea that Secretary General UN, Secretary General Antonio Guterres posed was something about, helping the Rohingyas to go back, helping humanitarian aid to get into there, and, working on the situation like that. But actually, I think even when Antonio Guterres proposed it, at the back of the mind was always this, that the US wanted a corridor to get arms help to the Arakan army and to put them up in a position of clashing with the Naypyidaw junta, which is of course backed by the Chinese. Now, I think this is a very difficult situation. It is almost never going to succeed, and certainly it can be very destabilizing for India's northeast, because if you have, as we know already, not only the Bangladesh border with Myanmar is now manned by the Arakan army, but many positions along the land border with India are also manned by the Arakan army. And so, it is the Aurakan army has defeated them, but there are two big ports, the Situate port, where India has a deep interest, and Chokfu port, where China has a deep interest. And there seems to be some kind of indication that, once these arms and ammunition come, because the Aurakan army has seized almost all of Arakan, but not these two ports. And these are, of course, very vital for Myanmar as such, for the whoever the government of Myanmar is, whoever the government of Naypyidaw is, these ports are very important. And this, right now, it's the army junta. So the idea seems to be to somehow seize these ports. Now, that is not going to be an easy aspect, nor is it going to be something that India at all would like to happen, because, Sikri port is for us very important, even as an alternative approach to the Bay of Bengal for India's northeast. These are very, very significant and important aspects. So, of course, India is watching this whole issue with grave concern. And now that the Bangladesh army has come out very categorically on this, I think, despite some elements in the army today saying that, oh, no, it's all okay, we're on the same page, I think the basic issues remain. Number one, the elections by December 2025, and number two, the fact that the army is fully opposed to the this corridor, the corridor, humanitarian corridor, arms corridor. Now, there is a question here that arises, which is that even now, even as Khalilur Rahman, the National Security Advisor, self-appointed by Mohammed Yunus, has been talking directly to elements in the army, like the 10-day based in Ramu, without consulting the army chief. Led to a direct clash. And will that continue? Will that continue? As it is, we know that Khalilur Rahman and the army chief do not get along on many points. There are many issues on which I don't have to go into all of that now, but there are many issues on which they don't get on. We also know that when this corridor, at one point, I don't know who it was, maybe 10 days, the Americans or somebody sent some Bangladesh army trucks into Aurakan, possibly with arms, possibly with, we don't know with what, but they were fired upon. And so they came back. So, there is already this very unstable situation there, and there is a lot to be said for maintaining the status quo, for not going ahead with this situation right now. So let us see what happens on that. Number two, I would like to question this fact that anything that Yunus regime decides is fine. I think that's absolutely unacceptable. How can you have a governance? And I don't think the people are ready to accept it, because the people of Bangladesh certainly want democracy, and they certainly are going to say that we don't think that anything you say is going to be gospel truth after this.
That is obvious on the streets. There are protests and protests and protests every other day. So
yes, and that those protests are because now, this is where I want to come to this point, that the government of Yunus, the regime of Yunus, has now taken decisions that affect every bureaucrat, and it affects the National Board of Revenue. They now virtually want to replace the entire bureaucracy with people of their own supporters. And so they've said, they've changed the rules. You know how it is for government rules. When you want to dismiss a government servant, you have to have a long procedure, etc., etc. That's all been dispensed with. And so now today you have the secretariat opposing, and now the secretariat gates are shut. Nobody can come in and out of the secretariat. So the whole of Bangladesh is in turmoil, and I don't know how anybody can say that, the decision taken by this regime should stand. I think the Awami League ban is completely malified. It is completely because the Yunus regime understood, the Jamaatis who are propping up the Yunus regime, they understood that despite 8 months of passage, they have not been able to get popular support in the rural areas. The Awami League vote bank is intact, and so to do away with the vote bank, they suddenly said abolish, off with the head of the Awami League. I don't think any regime can behave like that. You appoint your own judges.
There's one question I'd like to spread to both of you all. Is that behind Jamaat is not only Pakistan, but Pakistan is certainly part of that whole, this thing. So I understand from people in Bangladesh that the Pakistanis are all over. There's the ISIs all over, the ambassadors all over. So how much is Yunus longevity dependent on Pakistan? Is Pakistan also sort of part of this whole thing to keep him in power, together with with the corridor and etc.? They are capable of backing that corridor. Though honestly, I don't see how you can have a corridor without the Myanmar authorities agreeing to it. It's not possible. But how do you both of you all see the Pakistan role here? If I can start with you, Smruti.
See, the Pakistan, definitely, we saw how the Pakistan High Commissioner was all over the place. Jinnah's death anniversary was also celebrated there. But right now, if the media report is correct, I think the Pakistan High Commissioner has left Bangladesh because of certain issues, their personal
He was
issues.
honey trapped. He was honey
Yeah,
trapped.
honey trap.
Okay,
So
right.
It's interesting to know who was behind the honey trap, who arranged the honey trap. Very interesting. Very
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, true. So of course Pakistan influence is there, not just Pakistan. Of course I can see a hand of the Turkey also, in terms of the influence and all, because they were playing a very significant role, as far as the Rohingya refugees were concerned. In fact, Erdogan's wife also visited the Rohingya camp, not now, earlier. So I would say that Pakistan influence is there, but I think the influence of the American will be very significant compared to the Pakistanis, how the government move. I think right now probably the most important thing is that what General Wakuru said, to push the government to hold the election as soon as possible, because all the decision which is taken by Yunus has to be tested on the ground of the parliament the moment the election happens and new government takes place, because these are ordinances, and ordinances has to muster the two-third majority within the parliament. We have seen in
No,
2000.
Shruti, what I have a background to my question, because I'm trying to understand why this man is going on raising this issue of the Northeast states. That is where I'm trying to see, is it a not Chinese influence? It is a Pakistani influence? Where is this coming from?
But the thing is that the moment you say Chinese influence, Pakistan influence, you are actually allowing the Bangladeshis to go scot-free. These are the people who are in
Yeah,
very significant position.
yeah.
And these are very significant people who are giving all kind of statement on the Northeast, including Muhammad Yunus. So Yunus, of course, his policies doesn't show that he is very keen in having a good relationship with India. For example, few of the things, the trade and all has been affected, as Bangladesh did not allow the overland trade to happen with India. Right now the India also has closed access of Bangladesh's garment industry, which they have said you have to also take the sea route to export and all. So I think in that context probably Yunus is trying to endure himself to the Chinese, and there are elements within Bangladesh who always think that if you are having a contest with India, you need to get the Chinese. So that is where we also have been hearing a project that is being developed by the Chinese near to the chicken neck, which is coming up in the newspapers. So I would say that the Bangladesh government is not friendly towards, as far as India is concerned. So I will blame the Bangladesh government. They are responsible people. Why are they doing this business? If we say that they're being influenced by the Chinese and Pakistanis, what is exactly their perspective on these issues? Why should they?
Ambassador Sikri, sorry, Ambassador
No, no,
Sikri,
no, no.
there recently a bunch of industrialists have said that, listen, we are virtually near collapse. We've got no gas, we've got no power, we are in grief. So, I mean, is it, I mean, what do you think we should be doing here? I mean, what is our role? Because one is to just sit back and let matters take their course until there's an election and then deal with the elected government. But to my mind, there's a lot of other influences who are now taking ground, as Smruti said. So what do you think we should be doing in future?
Well, first of all, I think we have to recognize that that Muhammad Yunus had been playing the anti-India card from the beginning, and possibly at the behest of both Pakistan and China. We have to remember that it was Pakistan that conducted this whole regime change at the behest of the deep state of the Biden administration. Now, how much of that deep state is still surviving? There obviously is a fair big chunk of that deep state still surviving. There's no new ambassador from America in Bangladesh. The CIA station chief remains the same. So obviously these people are still continuing the policy of the Biden deep state, and the whipping up of the anti-Sheikh Hasina feeling, calling her fascist, etc., was very closely linked with a vicious anti-India campaign. A vicious, the kind that you cannot imagine, trying to persuade every single individual in Bangladesh that, there couldn't be a bigger villain than India, and, they're responsible for everything. And even today, anything that goes wrong, even in today's papers, India being called the big hegemon, it's there all the while. Now, I must say one thing, that I think Yunus, backed by the Jamaat-e-Islami, has completely overplayed the anti-India card. it is now boomeranging on him.
Mm.
All the decisions that he took, thinking that, we're going to, annoy India. For example, I remember a Turkish delegation, you were talking of Erdogan and so on. I remember a Turkish delegation going to Bangladesh somewhere way back in September or October of last year and promising Yunus, we promise you, we will give you everything that India supplies to you. We will replace India in your trade. Of course, it's impossible. And Yunus tried it. He tried that, Indian, and thinking that if Indian imports are stopped, because obviously India has a very large amount of exports to Bangladesh, that if these Indian imports are stopped by Bangladesh, then India will suffer. And that our export, but it's happened exactly the opposite way.
Yes.
All the goods that India supplies to Bangladesh, whether it is cotton or cotton yarn or man-made fiber or textile machinery or pharmaceutical ingredients, these are inputs into Bangladesh's own manufacturing for export. So when these goods were stopped from India and they tried to get it from Turkey, from Pakistan, even from USA, it was coming at a much higher price. It was coming with great delays of time. As a result, factories have shut down, people have lost their jobs, and all the orders which were going to Bangladesh are now coming to India. Tirupur has been one of the earliest to respond, and they have picked up a lot of these orders. So all the goods which were being supplied to Bangladesh are now going to Tirupur to be used in Tirupur factories for manufacture for the new export orders that they are getting from all over the world. After all, the buyers for Bangladesh ready-made garments are all sitting in India. They were all operating out of India. So the moment the Bangladesh market seems dicey, they shut it down and they turned to India. So I think this is where, Yunus has really overplayed his hand. And he's still trying to use the card, but it's not cutting any more ice. People in Bangladesh are openly saying, Aage bhalo chilo. It was better earlier. Even the rickshaw driver is saying that in Dhaka. So they realize that the synergistic relationship with India, the symbiotic relationship with India, is a mutually beneficial relationship. It helps India, but it also helps Bangladesh. And certainly it has helped Bangladesh over the last 15 years to have a rate of growth of 6% plus every year, which now, even in the last 8 months, has halved to less than 3% and is on the way down. So I think Bangladesh's prospects are looking so poor that I don't think, that anybody in Bangladesh is now supporting the regime, because they know.
Where is our, I mean, how do we play this? Because if you sort of, what shall I say, if you kind of remove all your leverages, then that doesn't make sense either. You have to keep.
Look, it's not a question of leverages. Please, I don't think I would describe trade as leverages. I am saying that trade is a mutually beneficial system.
No, I get that.
Connectivity is a mutually beneficial system. We haven't stopped it. It's Bangladesh who has stopped it. And they have proved that it's not helping them. We have not stopped anything except in response to what Bangladesh has done.
Yeah, I get that. So in terms of, sorry, we have to wrap up now. Closing remarks. Given that this whole lot have been, let's face it, airdropped from the US, Yunus and his student leaders, given that there is a Jamaat-e-Islami backing, where do we go from here in terms of policy? What should we do? And if Ambassador, if you could go first.
Well, I think on policy, we have been very watchful. We have been very careful. But I think that the army is the sole source of stability and authority in Bangladesh. The Yunus regime is temporarily illegitimate. There is no question of supporting a regime which has, taken these very strong anti-India positions, which is really supported by the Islamists. And the Islamists want Sharia law. No, and the Amir may try to appear very moderate, etc. But it's very clear they've had this goal for the last, decades. So I think we have to support what the army wants, and we have to insist on a caretaker government. There is no way that Yunus will be, run the election, because he has compromised all his, shall I say, unbiased position. He has compromised all his levers of power to show that he is not unbiased. He is not a caretaker.
He doesn't go either. He's absolutely unwilling to.
And I think if the army should take back power, have a caretaker regime for 3-4 months, and organize the elections by December. and these have to be free, fair, and inclusive. That's the second point. And third point, whoever wins in these elections is fine. You know, the BNP, for example, we haven't even spoken about the BNP, but I'd like to say 1 or 2 points, in about the BNP, because they have actually made themselves very unpopular, particularly in the rural areas and semi-urban areas, as extortionists. You know, earlier Awami League was being blamed as extortionists. Now BNP has taken over their job as extortionists, and Jamaat-e-Islami has cleverly let them do that because they're getting all the blame, and Jamaat-e-Islami is sitting back, saying, "Well, this is not us, this is BNP." So BNP is in a bind, and the Jamaat-e-Islami is trying to split the BNP. They're trying to take away the pro-Jamaati portion of the BNP and get them to support them, so that the moderate part of the BNP, which is very committed to the liberation war, which is very committed. And I think here is one more point that I want to mention, which we have not mentioned in this: the commitment to the liberation war values by the people of Bangladesh. Actually, the army in the army chiefs meeting, this point also came up, that the values of the liberation war are non-negotiable. I think this is what the people of Bangladesh want. They are committed to the liberation war. Let's not get carried away by all this hawa of July Declaration and Second Republic and all that. I think getting carried away is what Yunus wants to happen.
Absolutely,
But
yes.
carried away is not what the people want to happen. They are remembering the liberation war. They are remembering, the contribution of the Awami League. They are annoyed that all the statues of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman have been tossed down, anything named after tossed down. So, I mean, please, let there be free, fair, and inclusive elections led by the army, who will appoint its own caretaker government.
I think that's a very, very sensible suggestion. Smruti, do you agree with that?
I would say that, I'm not very sure whether, I would argue that army needs to take over, but I would say that there has to be an election. There has to be an election roadmap. The government is unnecessarily spending its entire effort on certain thing when there is no consensus. Especially, the reforms which they have, police reform, the election commission reform, the constitutional reform, and all this kind of thing. This should be, like, I would agree with the BNP's point of view that there has to be minimum reform. Have the election first.
Yes.
Let people decide. And I agree with Ma'am Sikri that it has to be an inclusive election. You can't have an election excluding the Awami League. It has certain amount of support. It's one of the strong party like the BNP. It has grassroots.
Smruti, I think the BNP would actually support that view. They would probably support an Awami League being part of it.
BNP's position was that they did not wanted a ban in Awami League, but initially, when this particular thing was announced, a faction of the BNP has been saying that they don't have any problem. But I think probably earlier they were very apprehensive that there could be a policy of -2, like it was done in 2007 and 8. So they did not wanted the Awami League to be banned. But having said that, I think it will be in the interest of democracy. Let the two political parties who have historically played a role, especially some of the leaders within the PNP had participated in the liberation war, but of course it is a different issue that Awami League completely monopolized the history of the liberation war. I think it has to be an inclusive election.
Yes.
You can't exclude a political party and have this election. Let people decide, what kind of reform they want and which political party actually is in a position to carry out reform. Because this, it doesn't appear to me that this government is interested in any reform. That just I feel it's a delaying tactics.
Absolutely.
You can have negotiation for years together.
But I think the point you made is very valid, that and in some extent, I think we were also at fault that the Awami League incorporated the whole liberation, the whole narrative into its political thing rather than the BNP. So I think in India also we need to stop harking back to the liberation war and gratitude. Gratitude is a very tiring emotion. So we need to really emphasize, look, this is your country. You need to go ahead with democracy, and we would support any inclusive government which comes in. And that's the bottom line. I think with that, we thank you so much to our guests. I think this was a fascinating discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.